Cradley was, and perhaps still is, most well known for having been one of the foremost towns whose working people were engaged in the handmade iron chain trades from the mid-19th century onwards. However, between 1850 and 1950, Cradley was as much a coal mining town as a chain making one.
The earliest record of coal being mined in Cradley was in 1640. However, there is evidence of outcrops being exploited at Netherend in the 14th century, and this early open casting of coal continued until the 19th century, when it was superseded by deep mining. Cradley lies at the southern edge of the workable measures of the Staffordshire thick seam of coal. The seam is up to 10 metres thick in places elsewhere, but is at its thinnest in this area. Some definitions of the geographical area of the Black Country are based on the extent of this famous and most productive coal seam. The coal generally occurred in 4 seams: the Bruch, Thick, Heathen and New Mine coals, varying in quality and thickness, and separated by layers of ironstone and waste. Under the bottom seam was a fine quality fire clay, and this gave rise to a local brickmaking industry. The clay was mined at depth, but also from open-cast marl holes, such as the one known as Spirit Hole at Homer Hill.
Coal mining in Cradley, and also the Black Country generally, is inextricably linked with the fire clay and iron industries, and also the coming of the railway.
The close proximity of coal and fire clay seams was useful to the fire brickmaker who raised coal to fire the kilns. The ironmasters converted coal into coke to smelt or puddle iron, and coal was also used in hearths and furnaces at the mills that refined the iron into finished products. The main expansion of the industry locally was from the 1860s onwards, after the opening of the Stourbridge Railway, which provided the principal means of taking the coal away. From 1863, the Hayes Lane branch line served the fireclay works and collieries that belonged to George Atwood & Co., Mrs. King, Perrins and Harrison, and Harper and Moore. The Cradley collieries were Hayes Colliery, which straddled the boundary between Cradley and the Lye. It was producing coal already in 1834, but mining ceased shortly after 1926, certainly by 1928. Lydefield, or Lyde Green Colliery, was operated from 1835 to about 1874. Netherend Colliery, actually 3 small collieries very close to each other, operated from at least 1843 until 1922 and were finally abandoned in 1925. Homer Hill Colliery produced coal from 1865 to the 9th of March 1928. Cradley Colliery, on the south side of Homer Hill, operated from 1865 to 19th of June 1917. Cradley Park Colliery, on the south side of Cradley Park, once the hunting park of Cradley Manor, operated from 1867 to the 20th of January 1933. Oldnall Colliery, on the hills above Cradley Park, where coal was mined from 1873 to 1944. Hillbank Colliery, operated from July 1888 to 1905 and was abandoned in 1915. Maypole Colliery was abandoned in 1917. Finally, Beech Tree Colliery at Foxcote, where shafts were first sunk in 1873, but mining only began in about 1922. Beech Tree was closed in August 1958, the last coal mining in the district.
Gas, fire and water were the greatest dangers for both coal miners and the continuing production of coal.
More than 20 mining disasters causing loss of life occurred in Cradley pits between 1862 and 1913. The first of these, on 1st of November 1866, was at the new Homer Hill pit, owned by Messrs. Evers and Sons.
12 miners died and many more were injured by severe burns after a violent explosion caused a rush of air, followed by fire some 500 yards from the bottom of the shaft at a depth of over 270 yards.
Another 12 men died at the same pit almost exactly a year later. There had been a heavy roof fall amounting to between about 200 and 300 tons, which was followed immediately by the explosion. The fall of roof had left an opening that contained a large quantity of explosive gas, evidently issuing from a fissured and very soft part of the coal seam from which the gas that caused the explosion had issued. In 1947, a boom year for coal, Beech Tree Pit produced 87,000 tons. In 1957, 81,706 tons were brought to the surface, and the coal being worked when the water first came through was the best quality to come out of the pit. The shaft went down 180 yards and the seams ran for roughly 1 mile. Horses were still used underground to pull the tubs.
David Parsons, an old miner who started work at the age of 14, was in charge of them.
A pit pony is one of the most trustworthy animals there is, and they develop the most wonderful instinct. If a shot firer is about to fire a charge, the pony will move away from the spot, and if your light goes out, all you have to do is catch hold of the pony's tail and he'll guide you back to his stable.
The closure of Beechtree Pit in 1958 was a big event. After nationalisation, the National Coal Board invested heavily in mechanising Beechtree and improving working conditions.
New main and tail haulage roads were constructed underground, and new pit head baths, canteen and offices were built.
There were 188 surface and underground workers employed at the time of closure, 118 of whom were transferred to Hampstead, Highley and Sandwell Park collieries. 21 pit ponies also lost their jobs.
The seams of coal, the southernmost workable seams of the entire coalfield, lay 40 yards below a layer of water-bearing strata. Mining operations had come close enough for the water to burst down into the mine, and the influx of water damaged the underground roads and the coalface. The flow was kept down by pumps for a time, allowing salvage of machinery while gallery walls disintegrated and collapsed as the water penetrated. When this pit was flooded, there were reserves of coal for at least another 10 years. The Beechtree site is now a shale-covered tip, Caslon Wood, planted with trees. The substation that once supplied power to the colliery remains.
And the former pithead baths were converted into the headquarters for the local scouts, the 2nd Cradley St Peters.